Hi, my name is Tarutr Malhotra and I'm from MoneyLane. We've been trying to figure out what the future of tech in India is now that Infosys and the other IT industries might be on the decline. Lots of people losing jobs, so who's going to pick up the slack? The first thing we looked at is the space industry. Now it's been in the news a lot lately. We've heard about the record-breaking launch in February. We've heard about this great new big rocket that launched in June. And of course, we've all heard about the Mars mission in 2014, which was somehow cheaper than a Hollywood movie. What I decided to do was talk to some of the people in the industry and figure out, is it really that positive? Are we really doing a good job, or is this just great PR? What I've found is it's best to go back to the start. So there was a man called Vikram Sarabhai who in the 1950s and the 1960s, when India had bigger problems, they were trying to establish themselves as a democracy. So we were trying to make ourselves a richer nation. Vikram Sarabhai decided to strike out on his own. He realized that you couldn't just talk about basic economic needs. You needed to show the world that you could compete at the highest level. And he decided to take on the space industry. So at a time when Indians didn't even know how rockets worked, he would go across the world promising countries like France, who are at the forefront of innovation, he promised to build them rockets in exchange for education. So what Sarabhai would do would send these talented young men, including a certain Abdul Kalam, to America, to Europe, to Russia, to learn about the latest technologies and bring it back to India. Now in 1969, after nearly 2 decades of work, the Indian government realized what he was doing and helped him build ISRO, which is the Indian Space Research Organization. Now ISRO has just gone from strength to strength, whether it's creating contracts with the West, stealing education from the West, or buying redundant technologies from the West. ISRO has been doing its best to maintain India at the forefront of space innovation. But all of this threatened to come to a close in 1989, when the Soviet Union was on the brink of collapse. Now, while this is a great thing for the people oppressed by communism, it was a bad thing for ISRO. ISRO had a lot of contracts with Russia, contracts to share technology. The moment Russia became a democracy, the Americans realized they had to protect these defense secrets. They didn't want another superpower. So what they did was they asked Russia to withhold all contracts, all defense contracts, all space contracts from the rest of the world. Now this meant that India, after 20, 30 years of talking to Russia, didn't have a partner on the international scene. So while we continued to have minor contracts with the West, we were never given access to cutting-edge technology. Most importantly, we were trying to build a cryogenic engine at that time. Without going into the specifics, a cryogenic engine it's more environmentally conscious and it's cheaper, much, much cheaper. So what India has been forced to do for the last 25 years is build our own engine. And we did it successfully, indigenously, in June 2017. I don't know if you heard, but there was a big rocket that went up called the Mark III. This is a huge, huge deal for ISRO. This proves that we can do some of the best work by ourselves. So unlike the IT industry, unlike any other industry in India, ISRO is competing with the rest of the world without any input from the rest of the world. They are innovating by themselves, which is a big deal in today's world of globalization and information sharing. However, it's not all positives. One of the biggest drawbacks in the last 5 to 10 years has been something called the Antrix Devas case. In 2005, ISRO, Antrix, which is their commercial arm, and Devas, a private space company, signed a contract. Under this contract, Devas was to pay $300 million plus recurring expenses to send up a few satellites on ISRO rockets. These rockets are supposed to go up in 2010, 2011. But unfortunately, because of a few problems here and there, the rockets didn't go up. In fact, one has only gone up in 2015, while the second is slated to go up later this year. The bigger problem is there are going to be no Deva satellites on those rockets. This is because in 2011, a Comptroller Auditor General report, which was leaked to the press, stated that there were a few problems in the contract with Devas. Importantly, they found that there was no auction for the Devas contract. If you think back to 2011, India was in the midst of the 2G scandal, which has had similar problems. So now that ISRO, Anthrax, and the UPA government were in hot water, they decided the best course of action was to cancel the contract unilaterally. This meant that Devas and all of their international partners were now out more than $500 million. They did the logical thing. They sued ISRO. This case was taken to international court because of all the many international companies that had invested in Devas. In 2015, they lost their first case, which forced ISRO to pay nearly $700 million to Devas. In 2016, they lost their second case. Now, the number hasn't been set yet, but people are expecting at least $1 billion. And there's still another case to be heard in next year. So this has understandably affected the management in ISRO. They've gone from being these bold, daring scientists who were striking out on their own to build this incredible cryogenic engine. They've gone from that to timid leadership who were scared of breaking other contracts, who were scared of any more media publicity, who were scared that if they messed up, ISRO's funding would go down. Now, in reality, this was never the case. It was never a threat. But you can understand where they came from. Unfortunately, according to Madhavan Nair, an ex-ISRO director and a vocal critic of ISRO's direction in the last 5 to 6 years, a vocal critic of ISRO's management in the last 5 to 6 years, he believes that they became far too cautious. Instead of working on multiple projects, which could have seen India at the forefront of technology today, they were forced into just the cryogenic engine. Instead of pursuing human spaceflight, something that India had plans for back in 2010, they've put that on the back burner. Instead of pursuing a reusable rocket, which would bring down costs immensely, and is something that the Americans are still struggling with, they put that on the back burner. Now that the cryogenic engine has actually been completed, we can move on. And ISRO has moved on. They're working on the reusable rocket. There are murmurings that possibly human spaceflight could be done in the next 10 years. We could have a man on the moon, an Indian flag on the moon within the next 10 years. According to Madhavan Nair, if it had not been for the fallout from the Devas case, we might have been a lot closer, maybe 3 or 4 years maximum. So today, the Indian industry is in a weird spot. Despite being one of the most advanced space industries on the planet, we still do not reap a lot of benefit. While ISRO makes a lot of profit, we only hold a 0.06% stake of the global space market. And when you consider the global space market is $323 billion without us, there's a lot that can be improved on. The important thing to be understood is that most of the money from this global space market does not come from government bodies. It's not NASA, it's not Russia, it's not China. It's private companies like SpaceX, like Blue Origin. These are the guys making a lot of money, sending up telecommunication satellites for Google. These guys make a lot of money, and that's where India is truly lacking. ISRO, as great as their work has been for the last 60 years, have not had a private industry challenging them. But recently, there has been a rise in what we call the new space industry. So there are these companies and entrepreneurs who want to do more, who are ambitious, who want to compete with the West. But they've run into some basic problems. First, because ISRO is behind NASA and behind the European Space Agency, we just don't have as much information. So even if they give out all that information to Indian companies, we're still going to be behind the West. So we need innovators. And luckily we do have a few innovators. These men say, yeah, it's hard right now. It's hard for us because we're striking out. But give it 10 years. We'll be the professors then. We'll be the Elon Musks and the Jeff Bezoses. And we will provide an environment for all those aspiring astronauts and space engineers 10 years down the line. So we just need to build our own education base. And they're all very enthusiastic about it. It seems like they've got a good grip on it. In terms of funding, we go back to India's natural advantage, our cost effectiveness. So there's a company called Bellatrix, 23, 24, 25-year-old founders, guys who got out of college, had the chance to join the engineering circuit, And I went, no, we're going to do something on our own. We're going to do something innovative. So these 4 friends get together, they create these incredible designs for thrusters, for rockets, something that no one is doing, something that challenges Russia, who's at the forefront of these innovations. And they take it to ISRO. If you remember, this is all by themselves, 4 guys sitting in a room. So they work on it for a year, 2 years, take it to ISRO. And ISRO are blown away. So today, 3 years into their journey, they're incubated in the Indian Institute of Science in Bangalore. They don't have to worry about costs. ISRO is helping them with funding, and they're even getting private investment. Yashas Karanam, one of the founders, told me that all they need is $2 million over 2 years. He plans to be profitable by 2019, which is absolutely ridiculous when you consider companies like SpaceX are still struggling to make revenue, let alone profit. So while there are problems, especially in the private industry, there are also solutions. And most importantly, there are people who want to find those solutions. You've got innovators and you've got a lot of backing. This is one of the few things that no one is opposed to. The government, the private industry leaders, the new range of investors, the general public, no one is going to say that exploring space is a bad thing. As a journalist, I'm trained to look for flaws. I'm trained to look for headlines that seem just a little bit too enthusiastic. And while it's perhaps true that we may be a little full of ourselves when we talk about ISRO's recent achievements, it's also true that ISRO and the private industry are on the right track. Even Madhavan Nair, the most vocal critic of ISRO since 2010, believes that the space organization is probably India's most successful program ever. When you consider the kind of stuff our country has done, I think that's pretty incredible.